You know what I miss? Classic traditional Zelda items. But unfortunately, those don't really exist anymore, since, you know. Sure, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have bows, Korok leaves, magic rods, etc., but all of mine are broken. So are his. These items are no longer special like they once were, instead being breakable weapons that you can just swipe off the back of your friendly neighborhood moblin. That is, except for these. These are the only traditional Zelda items that stuck around as is, and if bombs can exist, at least in Breath of the Wild, then what else could? Let's see what we can do about that. Psst, and if you like this content, make sure to subscribe, otherwise I'll just feed you to the Lionels, you fucking moron. For this video, we're bringing in 4 items to convert into permanent abilities. However, that doesn't come without certain challenges. Specifically, I want to keep both the Sheikah Slate and Arm in mind, along with their motifs of ancient technology and primordial magic. Also, runes are more about manipulating the world's natural systems. Magnetism, gravity, and time aren't tangible things, but rather forces that Link can control. But that doesn't mean we can't count out bringing things into existence, as seen with bombs and bikes. If they can exist, why can't others? And so, with that all out of the way, what items could we see? What items could we see turn into? God damn! What are you? The Beetle is probably something you forgot even existed. Only appearing in Skyward Sword, a majority of people who are aware of this aren't even from playing that game, but rather Super Smash Bros. As a really fun item that no one in their right mind would ever get mad at. However, in Skyward Sword, it changed the entire way the game was played, switching from a third-person adventure game to not that. In Breath of the Wild, there's no rune that actively takes you out of the experience. Except for one, but we'll talk about that later. But I think if we were to add the Beetle, it'd have to be much different from the source material. In Skyward Sword, the Beetle's purpose was to grab objects and hit switches while you piloted around. This is very much a puzzle-focused trinket, and I think that it could act in the same way, but under different circumstances. For the sake of comparison, let's take a look at another item actually carried over into Breath of the Wild, the Boomerang. Unlike in previous games, Breath of the Wild's Boomerang can't return distant objects to Link on its way back. So if you were to attach the item retrieval system to another thing, say the Beetle, that already gives it a very solid niche. Despite this, I think we can go a step further. I feel like it'd be too simple for a rune to just retrieve stuff from far away. However, if there's a way to carry something to a place, I think the added depth could make both puzzle solving and combat really fun. Essentially, our Beetle could act as a rudimentary airdropping system, where before you had to use octo balloons, Korok leaves, and a dream, it can now be done by simply dropping the item and ordering the Beetle to deliver it. To recap, the Beetle, when shot out, does one of two things. It either retrieves items that it's locked onto, or carries items that are on the ground in a straight line. The Beetle itself doesn't do any damage, rather acting as a courier that can either benefit you or deter the enemy, and that doesn't even mention the puzzle-solving applications like hitting switches. Then again, there's more than one way to kill a bokoblin, and sometimes you just want to have some fun with it. This fan favorite from Twilight Princess could easily come back in a crazy new way as a rune. Having the ability to control what you shouldn't is inherently a thing that piques people's interest. The Dominion Rod, as a concept, doesn't have to be changed all too much from its original iteration, but I do think we can add a little more pizzazz to it. See, in games past, you were typically only able to take dominion over statues, inanimate objects that could mimic your every move, attack, traverse, stand around, whatever that may be. And that could work in the open world Zelda formula as well. I mean, we have guardians and constructs, inanimate objects given life through magical and mechanical means. I think if you were able to control just those enemies, that could be enough. However, I don't think that limiting this ability to just 2 classes of enemy would be doing it justice. Why have a rune that can only be used on one thing? Oh. Yeah, let's avoid that. I think if we were to extend the reach to general enemies, both alive and not, I think it'd contribute not to just a funnier experience, but a more freeing one as well. However, to compensate, there needs to be a way to balance things out. Obviously, having dominion over dominions is kinda broken, so instead of having full control of the bokoblin right away, I imagine that they'll initially freeze up in a daze, unable to move, and more importantly, unable to attack immediately after the spell is cast. This would last for a few seconds before the effects really kick in, where instead of having direct control of them, like in prior games, it just makes them act a little crazy, damaging anyone who gets caught within their flailing arms. Maybe this draws the attention of others in the area. Who knows? And naturally, after a bit, it wears off and things go back to normal. I also think that this rune would just be funny. I mean, with the Sheikah Slate, it could look like they're gaming, with them playing as the controlled entity, and with the arm, Link could just point and snap, and bam, off they go. That's hilarious. But what if our intended target is, say, hidden in a cave or something? Wouldn't you want to know exactly where to look? Link does. Now this item in particular fits perfectly with these two systems. I mean, you just saw how it could work with Link's arm, and the Sheikah Slate can utilize the already existing camera. Two birds, one stone. Fuck you, Revali. In the games that the Lens of Truth showed up in, it acted as a new way to see the world around you. And by that, I mean that you got to see all of its dirty secrets, often loaded with rewards, chests, secret passageways, and dead people are all revealed to you when you use this macabre magnifying glass. For example, if you want to, say, rush an enemy camp, being able to see everything and everyone inside of that cave would be definitely advantageous from a strategical perspective. And conveniently, this would be a near one-to-one conversion. When using this, you're granted sight of things that aren't immediately visible: chests, caves, enemies, and so on. This is more so a case of not fixing what isn't broke, as, man, this would be a really easy thing to bring in. But realistically, would this be able to be plugged into a game like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom without any issue? Would this mesh? Yes. And as a matter of fact, I wholeheartedly think that this would be an amazing tool when applied to the open world formula, especially for A, younger players who don't know what the hell's going on, and B, completionists who just want to do and get everything. It may seem like this could act as an easy mode, but there's willing trade-offs for using this, like not being able to do anything else other than move around, as is the case with most other runes. Alrighty, we've covered everything from runes that commands, collects, and comprehends the world around us, so to end off, let's crack into our final revitalized rune, the iconic Hookshot. It's honestly a tragedy that this fan favorite wasn't in Breath of the Wild, and in all fairness, I see why, and I understand the hesitation for the game developers to put it in. However, that doesn't mean that it couldn't work. Sure, there's ascend, climbing, and the whole crafting system with Ultra Hand, but sometimes you just want to go to a place faster than you can with a horse. There's a lot of limitations to these current systems, and to be frank, I think that something this idea has over those aforementioned is speed and omnidirectionality. To address the other options real quick, Ascend goes straight through the ceiling and has you pop out the floor of the next level. No real wiggle room there. Climbing takes stamina and is largely limited by weather, and with the Ultra Hand system, you need prep time and materials, not to mention the fact that you'd be at the mercy of a battery. The Hookshot would be largely disconnected from that, rather being on the standard cooldown that a rune typically has, and even then, that's at most a 5-second time loss. As for functionality, I imagine it'd work in the same way that it does in games prior: aim and shoot. But wait, this seems quite powerful. We need some limitations, and I think for this we can draw from Magnesis, allowing for some context sensitivity. I think it being able to be used on wood is a given, as it's worked in the past, but since you aren't actively using a hookshot in the traditional sense, I think adding rock as a material would definitely make up for any of those shortcomings. That way, you could hookshot onto stuff like mountains and save a little stamina from climbing. Take that, you stupid fucking bird. And there you have it. 4 classic Zelda items converted into fresh, new abilities perfect for Link's trek around Hyrule. What's your favorite? Let me know!